All right, so we're being joined by the one and only Brandee Harrington, joining us today, taking time out of her busy schedule, the author of My Coinz Journal. Uh, and we are here at Belmont Jackson with our personal finance class. We're recording this for our friends in Madison County Schools at Ridgeland High School, Madison Central High School, Germantown High School, and for our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation to be here, and I'm just so excited to be here to talk a lot about obviously personal finance.
Yeah, so like I said, we did watch a brief video on My Coin. So you tell us a little bit about what it is and why it's so important, and why even young people now need to start really thinking about leaving financial well-being for their families to keep themselves out of costly things later, and to be very, very well prepared when transitions happen.
Well, I mean, I think, oh, I'm sorry, let me do a couple things. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is you're never too young to start planning, right? I think one thing people need to understand, even as young people, is that you obviously have something of value or something that someone in your family could actually use. And so one of the things that the Coinz Legacy Keeper does is help people understand that what you've worked so hard for should not just go to the state, but it should go to those that you would ultimately want to be able to use it, which is normally your family or children, hopefully. But more importantly, just people that your loved ones that you would really want to be able to have access to. And so that's the real essence of the Coinz Legacy Keepers, to ensure that your family members aren't scrambling to find important documents such as that, because even though you're young, and I know this class more seniors, correct?
I have one sophomore, I have one freshman, a couple sophomores, and mainly juniors and seniors.
Okay, so especially for your juniors and seniors, again, freshmen, you all can start thinking about this. One of the things to think about is that you all are still be embarking upon college. And when I went to school, no one really talked to us about the importance of this. No one really had this conversation with us. And for me, it took one step further. Even though I'm the author of the Coinz Legacy Keeper, it does go back to financial literacy. And I believe is a huge component, because if all we're taught to do is to continue to acquire wealth, but we're not taught to protect the wealth, then in essence, what are we doing? And so one of the things I tell people is that when you think about financial literacy, this is, in all practical purposes, your ability to use the knowledge that you're learning right now to manage your finances, not just for school, but for that thereafter. And even when you go to college and post-college, you need to understand financial literacy. And this, to me, is a component of financial literacy.
Yeah, and you did mention the fact that you said you didn't learn any of this growing up, because they may not know, you grew up in Jackson, went to Lanier High School, you went to Jackson State, so you are a local product of Jackson, and you grew up obviously in the Black community. And one thing I hear a lot is that financial literacy isn't being taught. So what really made you want to change that trend?
Well, a couple of things. So I was born in Jackson. I was raised in Chicago, and I came back and went to Lanier. So one of the things, even from being a product of Chicago and even here in Mississippi, is that oftentimes we just don't have this conversation. I think it's more so a taboo conversation. Maybe we think we're supposed to learn this in school, or honestly, I just don't really understand when we're supposed to be taught this. Nothing against school systems in general. I just don't know if we really put enough emphasis on the real understanding why financial literacy is so valuable. When we look at how much credit card debt, we look at student loan debt, and the things that's going to happen thereafter, this is going to come a component. Because for me, when I went through a personal story that made me understand the value of this, and now transitioning over as a real estate broker and an author, I'm seeing it even more and more that once we don't have this foundation where we understand the value of financial literacy, then it affects every aspect of us, not just from going to school, but with the school choices that we're going to make, the debt that we're going to incur once we get student loans, when we go out and actually want to buy a house and a car and all those other things and grow a family. This foundation of financial literacy, to me, was something that was missing. And I just felt like, you know what, we need to start having a conversation, whether we want to or not, but really addressing the elephant in a room to have these type of conversations.
Yeah, so when you talk about this conversation, what is it that what is it that you think is being left out? Like, what types of documents are people not having? What types of plans are people not making, and then finding themselves in a tough position to get out of?
I think it's just really my slogan is creating creating legacies through conversation. And what we're not doing is we're no longer conversing, right? We're no longer talking about what our family has or what I have for my family. So if you really start at the essence, everything is basically internet, or we're texting now more than ever. We're no longer really sitting back down at, for holidays and for Christmas and even vacations and talking or conversing about what we have. Everyone is so guarded and or afraid to share that vulnerability that I think we're missing out on how it affects the generations to come. But if you're really going to be conscious about this, and if I ask most people when I have this talk, how many of you all work for the state, or to leave this to your, or how many of you all want your family crying and or struggling, or how many of you all have access and your family doesn't know or would want them to be struggling? Most people will tell you, no, absolutely, I would never do that. But then if you say that, then why aren't you having these things or these parameters in place to ensure that that doesn't happen? Because we've seen it even from people in the news and people that we follow and we love, our actors and actresses and rappers and music people, that they too are just like us, even though they may be in the limelight, but yet they don't have these valuable tools in place. And you're like, wait a minute, is there a disconnect with, like what's going on? And it still comes back to the essence of we are not understanding the value of financial literacy. And to me, the Coinz Legacy Keeper is a part of the financial literacy that we need to have, because it impacts everything, even as it relates to us continue to, thrive as adults.
Yeah, and when it comes to and you talked briefly about the things you're going to acquire later, things you got to deal with later. We're a rural community here, and I think a lot of these rural communities, the older generation, it's not that they just haven't been informed, because my grandparents, your grandparents, they could still depend on Social Security. And I think a lot of people, that they've told and again, I'm not criticizing either, because I think a lot of it is just a lack of being told about the changing of the economy, is that you can't just depend on your Social Security check when you turn 65. There has to be some sort of planning. There has to be some sort of retirement planning, some sort of money to make sure that not only that yourself will be comfortable, that your family will be comfortable as well.
Exactly. I think that it then goes into, like you said, lack of education. I think we maybe, speaking back to grandparents, maybe at that time, right, we did have, Social Security, at least they did, and they had, thinking that was enough at the time. But now we're 2022, when you look at the factors of just inflation and other things that's happening, you have to be able to say that's not going to be enough. If Social Security even is an option, right? That's another conversation for another day. The point is, if that's not enough, what are you going to do to help supplement your income, especially if you're used to a certain income, or if you have children and or mortgages and other expenses, or that are coming from that? Then what are you going to do? So, excuse me, what is your family going to do rather? So I think we have to discuss the benefits of insurance, the realisticness of that you need living trust and living wills. And these are not conversations that are scary in nature, but they're just like we plan for anything else. Just like Greg, if I said, do you already have Thanksgiving plans? What would you tell me?
Yeah.
Okay. And so why have you already chosen? Why do you already have Thanksgiving plans?
Because I'm making money.
But you plan it, why? Because this is something you always do, right?
Yeah.
You know that Thanksgiving is going to be on what? November what?
This year it's the 25th.
Right? No, yeah. So, but Thanksgiving is coming, but my point is that you plan for it because you know it's coming. What I'm asking most people to do is stop, because you don't know the plan of when that may occur or when you may get ill and just somebody has to take care of you. I'm asking you to do something that you don't know the date of. And what most people don't like to do is plan for that, but they will plan for birthdays. They can plan for Thanksgiving. They can plan to go to the Jackson State game this weekend, right? We can plan for homecoming. We can plan for all of these different events because we know what the date. But when I ask people to start planning for stuff such as this, I just don't know the date. And you normally see people tend to get a little shy. They tend to get a little abrasive. They get a little bit, they get these walls up. Why? Because that's not something they're really comfortable talking about. And I think it just comes down to really just stop, not dealing with it and just dealing with it, and at least ensuring that what I've worked so hard for is protected.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a common mistake, and it's not. I don't think it's even specific to any type of community. I think that's a generational thing. Is that they're like it's not interesting and it's boring, and I don't want to pay attention to it. And I'm sure you've seen it yourself doing this. You see people that has just crippled their entire family because they weren't aware of the consequences.
Yeah. And I think the other part to that, if we were to talk about financial literacy and we're talking about the effects of coins, is coins deals with obviously ensuring that we're dealing with what I like to tell people, or at least what most people don't like to talk about, is the B word. And the B word has been basically tabooed, and it's been ostracized, and people are like, oh my goodness, like, how dare you say that to me? They get offended, and people are just like, oh my goodness, the audacity, you're going to tell me what to do? And for those of you who may be wondering what the B word is, let me help you. The B word that I'm referring to is budgeting. Okay, because that's the B word that we're talking about, because most people have to budget to get ready for these type of events, right? Because you're going to have to put money aside for trust or insurance and things like that. Or I'm going to have to help you from a financial literacy side for the budget of whatever it may take to be able to help ensure that if you don't have enough for Social Security, you're going to have other things that help you generate income. So you're going to have to be disciplined with your money. So the B word that we pretty much have coined to think is such a terrible word, I like to think of it as, now I've redone the word. It's called optimizing your coins. And you and I both know that if you're thinking about coins deals with what? Your dinero, your bread, your money, all of those things. And people understand the term, and it doesn't mean pennies, but even though all pennies lead to dollars, the point is everybody understands the essence of coins. But if we're optimizing our coins, right? If we take the word coins, and I've also broke it down even further, is creating opportunities of income with Zeal. So now you have new opportunities to use your money to create new opportunities for you and your family. So now we're optimizing our money. We're telling our money where to go. So to your point earlier, if we're saving for different things, if we're now going to be good financial stewards and we're going to be ready to help our family, we're going to be prepared because we have a trust. Now we have money that we've optimized for, insurance. We have money now optimized for other different revenue streams. Our money now can work for our family.
Exactly. And you did want to share your screen as well?
Sure.
Now, and while we're getting to that, while we're transitioning, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the new national initiative to increase minority homeownership with the Black and Hispanic communities. And I know with you being a real estate broker, that's something you deal with a lot. So what is something that you see a lot of people don't understand when they say they want to buy a home? Because obviously they see it on Instagram, they think it's their dream, but they don't realize what they're getting into. So as far as that goes, what do you see as far as a big obstacle?
Well, I think if we're going to talk about that, hold on one second while I pull that
sure.
up.
Fine.
One thing I think we need to realize, if we're talking about, before I transition into that, is really understanding the value of, again, optimizing your money. Most people, in terms of buying home ownership for the Black and brown communities, is that there's been a stereotype, just, oh, well, we'll just continue to rent. Well, we think about what that looks like for not just yourself, but what that looks like if your grandmother, all she did was rent, or if you or your mom rent, how much money has basically been given away just in renting. I like to do real easy numbers. And if we were live in person, I'll tell people to just pull out their phone, and let's just say right now rent on the average is $1,000, right? And if we do $1,000 at 12 months, that's $12,000. I mean, yeah. So that's 12,000 in 1 year. If we're having generations who continue to just rent, and let's say your grandmother rented the property for 20 plus years, we can stop right there. You do the math. We just said that it's $12,000 for 1 year, right? Now, this is, again, given that inflation there was no rent adjustment. So this is going to be a very easy number. So if it was $12,000 a year, your grandmother rented for 20 years, your grandmother has already spent,
It's almost $250,000.
It's 240, and just that. Now, if your mother's done the same thing, Now, again, I didn't take any inflation. I'm not going to go up, but let's just say hers was $1,100. Let's think between those two generations, how much money has gone in just renting.
Wow.
And we see people in communities of color who never understand the value of home ownership. And so if you think about home ownership from that standpoint, let's think about this. Now you have no, tax benefits, because there's tax benefits when you actually own your property. Now your landlord, I tell people all the time, people pass away, companies don't. So if that person has a living trust, right, and that company decides, or that person passes away and then somebody else buys that property, let's say you were renting to own, which I hate to use, but people then now have to start the whole cycle over. Why? Because that person passed away. There was nothing legally written for that person to be able to even have this discussion with you on the right way to be able to go to the bank or to the attorney's office and to file these right documents. And people don't understand that. And even in our culture, we think, well, I don't really want to deal with a house, or I don't want to deal with the upkeep. That's silly. Because what we're doing is that we see that once you no longer own, you have no real control over your rent. You have no control over what happens in your communities. And more importantly, you just have no control of what your generations or your children or grandkids will even see as pride and joy in terms of our communities. And then the narrative gets changed, because now we're subject to people controlling you on where you can stay and not stay, or push you out of areas where you grew up. And then they're in turn buy that same property that paid pennies on a dollar, reinvest by putting the right things in place, and then immediately being able to make a huge amount of money for the same property that you did not want to put into. And it happens. Right. And so I think what we have to do is we really have to understand the value of home ownership. I actually have a buyer right now who is coming into the property with equity. Do you all discuss that?
A little bit.
Okay. So equity, guys, is really quick, is the money that's in your house that if it's valued at, let's say, $100,000, but the appraised value came in at 125, that means that person has $25,000 in equity in that house. That's a lot of money. And if something were to happen, they don't necessarily have to run and get a credit card to get, access this money. It's actually less expensive. And I'm sure Greg can do a great job teaching them that. But more importantly, if they needed that money, they could tap into the property themselves, which is through a HELOC, and they could pull that money out. Now, maybe out 25,000, they only need 5,000. But the point is, they don't have to spend nearly as much money paying it back as they would if they would take a credit card, charge them $5,000, and in turn, get ready to have to pay that company back.
Yeah, we actually had a student did a presentation on this on Thursday, and they did a pretty good job. So we did talk briefly about this.
Really? Okay. So you all, and again, it's just so people can understand the value with understanding why home ownership is so important. Because like you said, I think what we don't understand is that when we don't play in the field, we're losing out. And the second thing I think we have to realize is that there's so few houses right now that are priced where most people, when we normally see an entry point, 150, 125, 150, it's becoming few and far between. And that's hurting the communities where, let's say, everyone wants these HGTV houses or the most expensive, but your budget doesn't match that. Again, financial literacy all the time. This is not one of those things that you think, well, am I going to even use this? Absolutely no. You're going to need financial literacy for everything that you do, because financial literacy is just way more than just, oh, we're just going to learn about some money today. No, we're learning about things that are going to impact your life and make the choices that you make afterwards. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into why we're having such issues with this. Okay, as we're transitioning, it's going to be in a PDF. What I'm going to do, are there any questions while we're pulling this up?
Yeah, I have a couple. We can go to let's see, let me find a good one here. Okay, here's a good one. This is Robert Branson. He's a sophomore, and he asked, what are the main struggles in starting your own company?
Well, that's a good one. I would like to say that I wouldn't say struggles, I say challenges. I think one of the first things you have to understand is that when you're starting any new business for the first time, you have to think about capital. Again, financial literacy. Who's going to help you? Who's going to be able to help you be able to generate income? How are you going to generate income? What's your business plan? I think you have to understand your numbers and your why when you're starting it. That's a lot for my entrepreneur class that's coming up. But one of the things that if I had to think about overarching is you have to know why you're doing this, because it's easy to go to a job. It's easy to know every week, 2 weeks, or monthly, your check is coming in. And we are sometimes, depending on what type of career or what type of entrepreneurship of a role that you're going to play, you just may be at the mercy of other people. Like in my business, I don't get paid from real estate when buying a house per se, unless this person closes on a deal. So if that deal falls through and it's worth thousands and there's no money, I generate zero money for the month. And that's sometimes a harsh reality that most people don't understand, that if I don't generate, if they don't close, I don't get paid. So all of my hard work of taking people out to go see a house, showing them properties, staying up to do reports and stuff, it means nothing if we don't close. So I think at the end of the day, that's just a situation you understand going in, because real estate, people think real estate is so easy, but more importantly, you just have to know that. And you have to be prepared or have, again, financial literacy, other streams of income to be able to get ready for that and prepare if that day comes. Okay. All right. So I created this, Greg, and I'm going to go ahead and show it. It's just not going to show up like that. But what we'll do is we'll work through it. Okay, because it's not going to come up like I want. I didn't do that. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen?
I see it.
All right. So this is a document that I created just for your class. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is a little bit about tips and strategies to help invest in you. And so one of the things I want to definitely have a conversation that I've been talking about a little bit all this time is really about financial literacy. And like I said earlier, there's 5 components that I want you all to walk away today with understanding why this is such an important topic and how it relates to coins and even being in entrepreneurship. Because at the end of the day, these components are vital to being able to help you all understand exactly what you need to learn, not just for this class, but even as you move on. One of the things that, according to the U.S. State's Treasury Financial Literacy, is that commission is that financial literacy is the ability to use the knowledge and skills to manage your finances effectively for a lifetime. Guys, this is so critical because, to your teacher's point, this is not something that we talked about a lot, even when I went to school, and it wasn't many moons ago, you know. So I don't want y'all to feel like, oh, they're just, my kids always tell me, Mama, that was so long ago. No, it's not. This was not a conversation that we had. And I want you all to understand that you all have way more access than we do. So definitely take advantage of the access and ask questions, because this is vital, okay? So when I look at the 5 components of this, one component of financial literacy is earning. Now, if I was in person with you all, one of the things I would ask you all is, when you think about earning is everything that you make as far as your job is concerned, right? If you work a job, whether you're a teacher, you're a doctor, a lawyer, you get a salary, right? You're going to take out and you're going to get paid gross and, net gross and income that you're going to make from this job. And one of the things that I like to tell people is, at least young students who are in this component, is that when you get this check, there's going to be subtractions from different things as it relates to, Medicaid. There's going to be Social Security that we talked about. There's going to be, maybe you have a savings account going away there. Maybe you have insurance. You have so many different components. So sometimes people think that, oh, I'm going to get paid X. Let's just say whatever you all would have told me. Well, that's your salary, right? But when you have to subtract all of the different deductions, that is what you bring home, and that's your net income. But
we're talking about next week, so I'm glad you're saying that now.
Okay, good. So your earning potential and what you're going to earn for this particular career may vary. Maybe you're on a salary. Maybe a salary worker gets paid this monthly income once a month, so they can easily use this to budget. But if you're a person who is hourly, maybe you work in Nissan or Amazon, it varies. I try to tell people that you want to be able to at least give yourself an account where you at least know, if I work X amount, or I know I'm going to make X amount, I'm going to get paid this first thing. Okay. Because the reason why we want to take what we earn and we use that particular lesson is that we want to make sure that we are going to be able to understand and set up a realistic budget. And guys, when we get set up this realistic budget, we have to know how much to spend. Now, most of the time, people don't have a problem spending money. We can spend money. Even as students, you all can go and spend all your parents' money, right? I'm sure if I asked you what you what you need today, what you need for school, what you want for a lunch, dinner, you can spend a lot of money. But when you get to be out up underneath your parents, when you're going to college, guys, think about it. You're now going to be responsible for spending some money. You have to know where that money is going to go. So if we're still talking about it now, we are now entering into a career field and we get paid once a month. Somebody tell me, what do you think a monthly salary would be? Anybody?
We got anybody?
Just name it. Tell me what you think you make a month.
What would be a good monthly salary? We got 2,000. We got 2,500. What else? 4,000. And then one other one said, and I agree, it depends on the job.
Okay, so since we have 2,000, 2,500, and $4,000, let's just say we make 2,500 since that's the medium number. Okay, so we have $2,500 now, guys. So we're having $2,500, and we're going to now create a budget. Or again, I just reached. That's a bad word. We don't like to say the B word. We're optimizing our coins, right? So now we're going to look at how do we take this 2,500, which is truly not 2,500 because we have to take the deductions out. But for easy number sakes, we're going to just leave it there. Let's say we bring home. What do you think, Greg? Let's just say we bring home $2,000 a month, right?
Maybe. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I don't know. It depends on how Mississippi's going to do on their state tax. On state tax.
So we're going to say 2,000, just easy numbers, okay? So that's 2,500, but then again, we're only going to bring $2,000 home because again, we just talked about those deductions. So now we have to be able to say for the whole month, we have $2,000, right? So we have to optimize our money. We got to tell our money where to go, right? Because this is all we're going to have until next month. Guys, think about this next month. So now let's talk about it. Where are we going to spend most of our money? We have income, we have transportation, entertainment, education, childcare, housing, utilities, food, insurance, personal care, health, medical, shopping, miscellaneous savings, debt, gifts, and pets. $2,000. So typically, again, if I was with you all, I'll have us, let's talk through this. What are we going to spend on each one of these categories? If you want to go through all these categories. The point is, this is what your parents and most adults have to be able to think about every month or every week they get paid. The reason why this is so critical is, again, this is something you're going to use throughout your entire adulthood, okay? So we want to create a optimizing our coins. And I know people don't like to talk about it because it's a bad word, but let's talk about if now that we have this, we're going to use this to be able to now stick to what people either say is a 50-30-20 plan or 70-20-10. This is how you're going to manage your money, meaning 50% of my money is going to go to needs, 30% is going to go to wants, and 20% is going to go to savings and paying off debt. So if we did that, we would take 20% of our $2,000, 50% of our $2,000, and that's $1,000 for needs. 30% is going to go to that 100. Of the 1,000 is going to be saved for our wants, and then 20% going to go to savings. And this is what we would have to use for the entire month. Now, again, since we don't have a lot of time, we're going to go into what do we do with that then? Well, we're going to have to save and invest it. So now we're going to look at how we're going to save and invest our money. We got to start for the emergency fund, which is what we just talked about. We're going to plan for the retirement, which is what we're talking about on why this is critical. And then we're going to look for big purchases, such as a house, right? That all of your money is going to make up a huge difference. And it impacts this as you all get more and more into adulthood. Okay. Then we're going to borrow. Now, this is super critical because oftentimes I get it. Sometimes you may have to borrow. When you go off to school, you're going to have to take out student loans. That impacts, again, your house. That's going to impact what you're going to be able to, what type of, the amount of house you can do, because you're going to may take 1% of your student loan to be able to then be calculated against you in terms of income. Then you may have to look at borrowing, maybe to pay off for a repair or something. So all of these different things that you borrow, if you buy a car, it's going to impact your credit score. It's going to impact what you're going to do in the long run in terms of buying a house, and even how you save. Because if you overspend because you're borrowing so much money, then you have less money to impact those other categories that we talked about. Okay. Now, let me make sure I do talk about this. If you borrow so much money and you never pay it back, it's going to affect your credit. Let me just say that again. If you overextend yourself, because again, we're still using this $2,000, and if your rent was $1,000, then you only have $1,000 left for everything else, car note, health insurance, whatever your categories are, and you have credit card debt, and you have other kind of miscellaneous stuff. If you overextend yourself because you borrow too much, it will impact your credit. The fact of the matter is that if you continue to have a low score, it's going to impact your insurance. It's going to impact what you're paying on APRs for the credit cards that you do have. And again, APR is the annual percentage rate. This is something that you can't get around when you borrow money from other people.
And with some, it can also affect your employment.
And then that was one thing. And then the third thing is going to affect your employment. If your credit is so bad that let's say it's a job that's going to require you to drive or get a credit card, and they can't issue you one because your credit is so bad, you won't get that job, no matter how qualified you are. So guys, understand that this is something you don't want to take lightly as it relates to, again, financial literacy.
Yeah, and we had a student Thursday. We had some great presentations. One of them did one on bankruptcy. And it talked about, it does discharge your debts, but that is a big thing on your credit.
Correct. And then even when you buy a house, guess what? They still can see that bankruptcy. So it doesn't go away. And to a loan officer or underwriter, guess what? That's like, if you couldn't do well when you had the opportunity, why would we give you a purchase such as a house and you can be able to mess that up? Again, I tell people all the time, even my buyers, this is like your report card, right? If they get a chance to go back into your report card and look at everything you've done, okay? Last thing you have to think about, the fourth thing in terms of protecting, when you're talking about insurance and things like that, this is going to impact your insurance. Again, if you can't set yourself up financially to be able to protect yourself from different things that may happen and or put yourself in a better position because you're not optimizing your money effectively, then a lot of this stuff hurts you from where you may want to go. Okay. So you got to think about all of these different things as it relates to financial literacy. These 5 factors impact a lot, and most people don't understand it because they think, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, it's very much a big of a deal because it's going to impact, even if you decide to go buy a car. Cars, I know you need a car, but buying a cash car may be the best thing for you. But if you want to go to the lot, they can charge you an enormous amount of money for APR and interest rates that it'll impact how much money you can do in these other things. Okay. So I threw this in here for you all because this is a quick way as you all get into adulthood. You may not do it now, but in 30 days, you can save $500. And you might be like, and nobody ever talked to you about, again, how to start this particular conversation. This is one way to be able to do this. This right here is just a tracker where you just taking money. Again, once you get to that point, it starts off with $5. You can start off with $5 per day. Maybe the next day you save $12. Again, granted you have money coming in, this is realistic. Okay. But this teaches you the discipline that you want in order to save, because everything is going to be like we talked about earlier, your financial literacy all is impacted based on what you can save and what you can optimize your coins on and be able to have stuff in the bank for lenders and people to see. Okay. So guys, this is very important. This is not a conversation that you have to think that is the olden days, or no one is really going to think about these things, is something that you're going to still have to think about. Even though we have all this technology that can tell you where your money is going, that can show you these things. I tell people, I don't care. I'm still a person of paper and pen. I think it's something about writing it down that makes it more real, because once you have these computers that tell you where your money is, you don't really understand it until you can no longer, you write it down and you see the money actually, or what is it I'm making per month. Okay. Any questions? I'm trying to.
Yeah, I got a few more. This one is Jakia Luckett. She's a junior, and she's asking about the difference between renting and owning. And she asks, in your opinion, what are the biggest pros of owning over renting?
Well, Jakia, great question. Thanks for asking that. One of the biggest things is that obviously home ownership affords you so many other benefits. Once you become a homeowner, now you're able to control the narrative. Like we talked about earlier, there's obviously going to be a time for everyone at some point to rent, at some point, right? It may be even if it's a year. I tell people who are starting off, if you have to rent, that's fine. Give yourself a year, put realistic dates in place. But once you own, you can then, let's say you grow out of that home within 2 years. Guess what you can do now? You can make that property a rental property, right? So now you can command people to pay you rent. And you can take that, and then again, paying still off your mortgage, you can use that extra money to be able to use as another safe, a nest egg for you. Maybe you have money to have now to go on a vacation, whatever that looks like. So the possibilities could be endless. Or you open up an Airbnb. I know you all know about Airbnbs. The point is you can do so many different things once you're able to own, and that's in anything as opposed to renting. Even in life, you see, when you own things, you can move the chips the way you want them to.
Yeah, and one thing about with homeownership, and again, I'm not an expert, but what just something that I've researched myself is that you also have to plan for the mortgage payment may be lower than a rent, but there's also, you have to budget for the other expenses that come with homeownership. And we again, I'm glad they talked about these topics in class Thursday with our presentations, because it did talk about home repair costs. They talked about home insurance costs, HOA cost, closing cost, all that. So I think, and you know, all they see is the mortgage and rent difference. And yeah, that's big, but there's also things you have to budget for.
Right. And so one thing about that, keep in mind, guys, when you're talking about your rent is just your rent. Now with your mortgage, your taxes and insurance are normally already escrowed into that, meaning they're already rolled into one account. So you are only paying that one amount, and they're going to pay your taxes and insurance at the table, is what we call it, when you get the mortgage. Now, HOA is another cost that's outside of that, but typically it's once a year or 2 times a year, and it may be less than $1,000. So yes, you will have to optimize your money in order to make sure that you have that money for your where you're going to be staying. And then you do want to be able to get, I tell my buyers all the time, to we get them a home warranty. That home warranty can help with repairs. So we've already paid for it when you went to the table for the closing costs, but more importantly, when there is a problem, let's say your AC goes out or your plumbing goes out, well, now you only pay maybe a $75 or $85 copay. And then that helps ensure that whatever that repair is, your home warranty can take care of that. So there's definitely some differences, but the greatest thing you have to think about is that now I can control this. If I want to paint all my walls black, I can. If I want to do whatever inside your house, not outside, because again, your HOA could dictate that. But what I'm saying is that you can be able to control what you want. You get tax benefits. You don't get that with renting. And more importantly, if you ever need money, you can come into your house and pull it out in a HELOC. So there's more benefits than there are negatives with owning a house.
Absolutely. This is Keisha Daughtry. She's a sophomore. And she asked, when things get complicated, how do you overcome your hardships?
Great question. So for me, I am a faith-based person. And so I will say that I know we're in a school setting. So for me, things have to be done in a different order for me. I try to be able to look at everything in a different lens. And I just do realize that some things, when it gets hard, let me figure out where I need to place my value. Meaning, do I really need to put this much energy into this, or is this a distraction to get my eyes off whatever it is I'm supposed to be assigned to? So for me, I don't allow those distractions to make me say, let me derail myself and think about all these things that's wrong, but let me figure out what's right. What can I control? What's the narrative right now? And what's more important? Because I know that all things work together for me. And so because I know that, I'm like, you know what, this is a distraction. Let me move my focus to something else, and let me decide to put my time and energy on things that are of good and of good cause. So that's how I decide to deal with things that are negative for me.
Yeah. And everybody has their own way, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to face adversity, no matter who you are. This is Tatiana Jackson. She's a sophomore, and she asked, was it hard starting your own company? And what would you say to someone who wanted to start their own?
Tatiana, thank you for the question. I think it's a matter of really, again, what is it that you desire? When you, again, going back to the other one, what's your resilience, right? What is it that you really want to do? And do you have the work ethic? I think most time people think that, oh, if I work my own hours, it's going to be so easy. Well, actually, you work harder, to be honest, because I worked in corporate America and I had a start time and I had a finish time. Well, when I work for myself, guys, I work a lot more now. I work probably, oh my goodness, I'm working all day. Like, your teacher can tell you I was up at night preparing for your stuff. Like, I have so many other things to do, but because I know this is something that is on my to-do list, I have to prepare for that. I have a closing. I have some people who want to go see a property. I'm like, wait, I have this. So I have to work even harder. I have a team that's looking to say, can you approve this for me today? And I'm like, if it's between these hours, 1 o'clock now, and I can't, I'm not going to be able to talk to you all. So when I say that, I say it laughingly, but after I finish, I'm still back at work. So where most people get off at 5, I might be just going to get my children, and then I got to come back to work because I have to be able to prepare for tomorrow. I have another talk and some other things to do, and some other people I have to, talk through. So it's not, I say all that to say not to scare you, but to let you know that it's not necessarily easy. It's what's going to be rewarding and what you've been called to do. And so that's why I like to tell people, what do you know is your work ethic? Because if you think you're just going to wake up, and I know we have IG and you have all these different reels that make life seem like just quit your job and just come on and just vacation. Well, how are you going to create all this money, guys? Don't let social media and the filters make you think that's reality, because you'll find yourself unemployed, broke, and homeless. Because I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to stay in these properties if you're just watching Instagram all day and they're real. They do this for likes, they do this for your attention. And so your job, if you're creating your own business, if you think the money just falls out of the sky, it doesn't. You have to have things in place. So I'm saying that to say, if you're looking to get into entrepreneurship, you have to really be focused and dedicated to what you've been called, and you have to be disciplined to whatever it is that you've been called to do.
Absolutely. This is Modesty Carmichael. She's in 9th grade, and she asked, what do you think is the hardest part of financial literacy?
So I'll be honest, I grew up as a planner, meaning I planned for a lot of stuff and it was natural for me. So for me, I think everybody did it. I'll be honest. I mean, I know it sounds naive. I used to think, oh, if I had $100, I'm gonna save $90, right? And I'll be like, nope, I don't have any money. I just thought everybody did that. I know that sounds so silly, but now I was real good with making sure my mother's money was spent, or I'll use my brother's money. But for me, I was like, nope, I'm saving all my money. And my brothers would say, my sister has plenty of money because she saves really well. And I used to think they were being mean, but I think for me, financial literacy comes down to really making you understand the value of what you're buying. We see so many things that we think we got to have today. Let's just be honest. If I ask to show of hands, who wants the new iPhone 14? How many hands are going to go up?
A few, about half of them.
Half of them. Okay. So, and if you had the money right now, you'll run out and go get that iPhone 14, right? But now, what if you really want to go on this nice vacation, and that's something that you really want to do too, but you got this iPhone 14 that you can have right now, or you can go on this vacation in a couple of weeks? What will you choose? And so I'm the reason why I asked that question is what financial literacy is telling people is that what I'm asking you to choose is, do you want to go and get the right now? Or do you want to wait and hold off for later on? And that's where most people don't have that discipline. They want the right now, but they don't want to wait till later on. But they want the one later on, but they're like, that just seems so long. I can have this right now. So what I found is that most people don't understand that if you decide to give yourself a little bit of time, you may ask yourself, do I really want this iPhone 14 right now? Or is it just because everybody's talking about it? But couldn't I imagine being on where this really nice vacation, whether it's Disney World or whatever that looks like for you, and you get to experience and you feel all of that. And even though my phone works, it takes great pictures, I can still do that and go on this vacation. I think for me, the hardest thing is making people understand everything in life is not going to be instant. We're not going to have a microwave situation. You're not going to leave high school, guys, and make $100,000. I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you, it doesn't happen for everybody. Everybody's not going to be football players or basketball players or lawyers immediately. We have to understand you got to put in your time. You got to pay your dues. And more importantly, you have to know what you're talking about, because if they pay you that type of money and you don't even know how to deal with that type of money, you will lose it. And even with basketball players and football players, you've seen it happen. They've had all this money and they lost it. Why? No financial literacy.
Yep.
That's
yeah,
it.
and I think it's important to, and I tell this to any young person. Unfortunately, being financially successful is not going to be easy. It's not going to be fast, and it's not going to be fun. So those three things are off the shelf, but like you said, the long-term rewards are definitely there. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. It was just such great information, and we thank you for doing that for us. But before we go, like you said, you grew up in Jackson. You're now a successful Black professional entrepreneur, speaker. Your resume, it just speaks for itself, and you're extremely humble and didn't even cover half the stuff you've done. But with these young people I have now, and the ones that'll maybe see this later, what are the main things they can do now to overcome these obstacles that you say you faced to be just as successful and just as financially literate as someone like you?
I think if I had to wrap up everything, guys, make sure that, sometimes you have to walk on your own lane. Don't worry about everybody else. I think one thing that I've always been known to do is to, walk in my own lane, not worried about what everyone thinks about you, because some of the people that you think are your friends, again, they may not be your friends even a year or two from now. So if you're living for them and they in turn decide to, for whatever reason, people, are here in your life for a reason, you got to realize, what are you going to do for you? And so for me, what I would tell people is that be your own person. And it's not necessarily be your own boss, because everyone uses that word so loosely. It's be who you've been designed to be. And that means walking in your truth, meaning if you are into numbers, be into numbers. It's okay, because guess what? Numbers, people create jobs, right? If you're into fashion, be into fashion. If you're into, accounting, be into accounting, whatever that looks like. If you're into studies or social studies, you like the history and stuff, that's you. Own that. Don't worry about trying to fit the mold for everyone else, because everyone is not going to understand why you are the way you are. So one thing I will tell people is we have to stop worrying about the likes. We have to stop worrying about, I tell my children, you are your own person. Walk in the fact that you know that I may not fit in with everybody, and that's okay. But who I am it's easier to be me than be somebody I'm not, and then I feel uncomfortable. And then realize that as you continue to walk into whatever it is that's easy for you, it will create an opportunity for you, because you've been true to yourself and not trying to be someone else, as you think about being pulled in so many different directions.
Well, that's great stuff. And again, Brandee Harrington, My Coinz Legacy Keeper. Tell us where to find it online before we go.
It's www.mycoinzjournal.com.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'll actually see you in a little while.
Thank you. Have a great day. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.